Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I'm Spencer.
And I'm Katie, and today we are talking about neuroplasticity. So let's see here. I have some articles and some videos for us to go over today. So, what is neuroplasticity? It is the brain's ability to change and adapt due to experience. It is an umbrella term referring to the brain's ability to change, recognize, or grow neural networks. This can involve functional changes due to brain damage or structural changes due to learning. Plasticity refers to the brain's malleability or ability to change. It does not imply that the brain is plastic. Neuro refers to neurons, the nerve cells that are the building blocks of the brain and the nervous system. Thus, neuroplasticity allows nerve cells to change or adjust. So there's two types of brain plasticity. What is neuroplasticity? Brain plasticity. It is the brain's ability to change and adapt. There is structural plasticity. Experiences or memories change a brain's physical structure. And then there's functional plasticity. Brain functions move from damaged area to undamaged area. Let's see. So, how it works. The first few years of a child's life are a time of rapid brain growth. At birth, every neuron in the cerebral cortex has an estimated 2,500 synapses, or small gaps between neurons where nerve impulses are relayed. By the age of 3, this number has grown to a whopping 15,000 synapses per neuron. The average adult, however, only has about half that number of synapses. Why? Because as we gain new experiences, some connections are strengthened while others are eliminated. This process is known as synaptic pruning. Neurons that are used frequently develop stronger connections. Those that are rarely or never used eventually die. By developing new connections and pruning away weak ones, the brain can adapt to the changing environment. Benefits of neuroplasticity. Allowing your brain to adapt and change helps promote the ability to learn new things, the ability to enhance existing cognitive capabilities, recovery from strokes and traumatic brain injuries, strengthening areas where function is lost or has declined, improvement that can boost brain fitness. So, a few defining characteristics. Age and environment play a role. So, certain types of changes are more predominant at specific ages. The brain tends to change a great deal during the early years of life, for example, as the immature brain grows and organizes itself. Younger brains tend to be more sensitive and responsive to experience than much older brains, generally. But this does not mean that adult brains are not capable of adaptation. Genetics have an influence as well. The interaction between the environment and genetics also plays a role in shaping the brain's neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is an ongoing process. Brain plasticity has limitations. The brain is not infinitely malleable. Certain areas of the brain are largely responsible for certain actions. Damage to key areas of the brain can result in deficits in those areas because while some recovery may be possible, other areas of the brain simply cannot fully take over those functions that were affected by the damage. How to improve neuroplasticity. Enrich your environment by stimulating your brain. Stimulating your brain might include learning a new language, learning how to play an instrument, traveling and exploring new places, creating art and other creative pursuits, and reading. And number 2, get plenty of rest, of course. Exercise regularly. Practice mindfulness. And play. Studies show that playing board, card, video, and other games can improve your brain's neuroplasticity. So there's problems with brain plasticity. Brain changes are often seen as improvements, but this is not always the case. In some instances, the brain structure and function can be negatively influenced or changed. For example, it can be problematic when it allows detrimental changes caused by substance abuse, disease, or trauma, including brain injury or traumatic experience that result in PTSD, and even lead poisoning can negatively impact brain plasticity. There are also some medical conditions that can limit or hinder brain plasticity. Among them are a variety of pediatric neurological disorders like epilepsy, cerebral palsy, tuberous sclerosis, and Fragile X syndrome. And how neuroplasticity was discovered. Let's see. This is a historical look at early theories. So, an ancient belief that the brain was much like an extraordinary machine capable of astonishing things yet incapable of growth and change. The inability to actually observe the microscopic activities of the brain, and the observation that people who suffered serious brain damage were often unable to recover. So, those influenced historical theories. So then William James, the psychologist, suggested that brain was perhaps not as unchanging as previously believed. Back in 1890, in his book, Principles of Psychology, he wrote, "Organic matter, especially nervous tissue, seems endowed with a very extraordinary degree of plasticity. However, this idea was largely ignored for many years." And then there's modern theories. Let's see. Modern research has demonstrated that the brain continues to create new neural pathways and alter existing ones in order to adapt to new experiences, learn new information, and create new memories. All right. So, why is it important? Without neuroplasticity, it would be difficult to learn or otherwise improve brain function. Neuroplasticity also aids in recovery from brain-based injuries and illnesses. What is an example of neuroplasticity? Research found that children with blindness have increased connectivity and reorganized neural circuits when compared with children without this condition. This suggests the brain adapts to the inability to see by changing its structure and function, providing children with blindness a greater ability to use the information received from other senses, like hearing and touch. So, and there is actually one thing I want to look up really quick that's extra, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Or do you want to just go over this really quickly? Where is it? Oh, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Brief summary. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself and adapt in response to changing environmental conditions or pathological stimuli. LSD is a potent psychedelic drug which has been able to rapidly stimulate neuroplasticity in animal studies. Various authors have speculated that changes in neuroplasticity may contribute to LSD's long-term effects, but there is still little direct evidence that LSD or other psychedelics enhance neuroplasticity in humans. The goal of this study is to investigate the effects of LSD on several measures of neuroplasticity in healthy human subjects. I guess there's only 40 participants, so it's kind of a small study. So let's see here. So change in motor evoked potential amplitude after paired associative stimulation. Assessment of capacity for... Oh, this is the primary outcome measure, okay. For neuroplastic changes. Eligibility criteria, contacts and locations. Oh, I guess it's not going to tell me the results of the study.
Did they do it yet, or are they like conducting it right now? I don't know if it says.
Oh, well, the last update was posted August 10th of 2022. So they might still be working on it, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it says no results posted yet.
That'll be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, I'm trying. Let me. See, there's another one. Let's see if we can. Oh, it doesn't tell me anything. Where's the conclusion? So evidence from preclinical studies show that psychedelics acutely stimulate structural neuroplasticity processes at a molecular and subcellular level after a single dose. Subacute effects of a single dose of psychedelic on molecular and cellular neuroplasticity have not yet been investigated, and one study investigating the long-term effects of psilocybin showed decreased neurogenesis weeks after a single dose. Repeated administration of psychedelics is shown to stimulate neurogenesis acutely and molecular plasticity subacutely. Moreover, a limited number of preclinical studies that investigated the relationship between biological and behavioral adaptations showed that the stimulation of molecular and neuronal was accompanied by increased learning behavior. Under stressful conditions, neuronal plasticity and molecular plasticity processes were found to be stimulated in rodents, and ayahuasca induced increases in plasma BDNF levels correlated with diminished depressive studies in clinical populations subacutely. So similarly, findings from the clinical studies showed that blood BDNF levels were directly elevated in healthy participants that were treated with a single dose of LSD. Long-term and repeated administration effects on molecular and cellular plasticity were not investigated. Overall, the limited evidence that is presented is consistent with our hypothesis that psychedelics stimulate molecular and cellular structural neuroplasticity. So it looks like they're still working on the studies, but so far the evidence is showing that it likely could be neuroplastic, but the evidence is not conclusive yet as terms of psychedelics and neuroplasticity. So cognitive behavioral therapy and neuroplasticity, how CBT changes your brain. So cognitive behavioral therapy provides an extremely effective treatment for many psychological problems. In fact, the relationship between CBT and neuroplasticity means that the work you do in challenging your thoughts also physically changes your brain. Your brain remains malleable throughout your life, and this neuroplasticity allows you to leave negative or unhelpful ways of thinking behind. Here's how this therapy can change your brain for the long term. So, is the way the brain functions set by genetics? Most children learn early on that their genetic code determines certain facts about themselves. In fact, your genes do determine many more things about your physical makeup, including the physical properties of your brain. Yet, even before birth, your environment begins to alter your body and brain. What's more, the choices you make and the thoughts you choose to hold on to can continue to alter the structure of your brain over time. So while genes set the baseline, what you do, think, and experience in the world all work together to determine how your brain is structured and how it functions in each moment after that. What is neuroplasticity? We went over that already. So neuroplasticity and anxiety. One research study explored CBT and neuroplasticity in people being treated for social anxiety. In the study, participants with social anxiety disorder received one of two treatments, CBT or ABM, attention bias modification. Never heard of that before. But yeah, before and after the treatment period, they had MRIs to show the current structures of the brain. The researchers also used tests to determine changes in the function of the subjects' brains. The results were that both the brain structure and function had changed for the people who were treated with CBT. The amygdala processes threatening stimuli that decreased in both volume and sensitivity. Whereas before, these participants' brains had quickly rushed into fight or flight mode, they now experience reduced social anxiety. This investigation into CBT seemed to show that the reason for the improvements was that their thoughts and actions learned through CBT changed their brain structure. In addition, it changed the function of how their brains naturally responded to perceived threats. Neuroplasticity and mood. The structure of your brain also affects your mood, leading to depression or its reversal. While no one knows precisely why some people get depressed and others don't, the stress model of depression has often been used. This model says that depression happens when chronic stress negatively alters the brain. CBT and neuroplasticity can work together to alter your brain, but in a different way. With your psychotherapist, you practice changing your thoughts and behaviors. Over a short treatment period, your brain begins to change, now trending towards neutral thoughts rather than negative ones. In depression, CBT can cause brain changes like improved connectivity between various parts of the brain, increased activity in certain parts of the brain, and reduced threat responses in the amygdala. What that means is your brain becomes more active in helpful ways and less overreactive to minor threats. These changes allow your mood to shift away from depression. So we don't need to talk about the antidepressants right now. Yeah. How CBT promotes neuroplasticity. CBT techniques have not only shown to change behavior, but also change physical structures in the brain. Goals of CBT are to work towards goals that matter to you, get involved and engaged in your daily life, and do things you enjoy. Linking thoughts to behavior. Recognize that thoughts that impact your perceptions which impact behaviors that then evaluate how it makes your life more difficult to manage. CBT techniques include role-playing, mindfulness, exposure therapy, journaling, and coping strategies. How do I... Okay. So the steps of CBT create these changes through ongoing practice. As you work to adopt different ways of thinking and behaving, your brain responds by adapting to those new thoughts and behaviors. Here are the goals of CBT and how this treatment works. Oh yeah, and we did go over the goals just now, so I can skip that. So CBT basics. It's based on a few core ideas. First, it assumes that the psychological difficulties come partly from unhelpful thoughts. Second, it recognizes that the unhelpful behavior patterns you learn also create the potential for psychological problems. Finally, if you learn better ways to cope with these problems, your symptoms diminish and you become more effective in living life as you choose. So basically, CBT is to change your behaviors and your feelings, you change your thoughts. So thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behaviors. Or sometimes thoughts just lead to behaviors too. But usually feelings are involved. So, let's see. Yeah, first, you learn to recognize the thoughts that impact your perceptions and the behaviors you choose. Next, you evaluate those thoughts, looking for cognitive distortions that are making your life more difficult to manage. Once you see these distortions, you can choose thoughts that are more helpful and accurate. It also involves learning and practicing problem-solving skills. You may spend time thinking about how others behave and what motivates them so that you can get a clear perspective of your world. As you change the way you think, you tend to become more confident in yourself and what you can do. As you get more information about the helpful ways of thinking, CBT and neuroplasticity work together to create new neural pathways in your brain. So changing behaviors in CBT. Your therapist can also help you change behaviors directly. They may assist you in facing your fears rather than avoiding them. This could involve talking about things you fear or physically going somewhere that feels frightening to you. As you speak with your therapist, you can work to create strategies for changing the behaviors that keep you stuck in emotional distress. Yeah, changing the brain by changing thoughts and behaviors. Let's see. I think this is just... Yeah. With cognitive behavioral therapy acting to change your neural pathways, your brain can change in ways that reduce or eliminate depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems. Over the course of your treatment, okay, this is just more advertising from them, I think. Yes, and then in the end, you become emotionally stronger and psychologically healthier. So that was cognitive behavioral therapy and neuroplasticity, how CBT changes the brain, from the Lucan Center for Psychotherapy. And then, well, we kind of went over this in the last article a little bit. So let me just skim this really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a small study anyways, so this isn't even... There's only 26 people.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to start at the end over here. So significant time and treatment interactions were found in the amygdala, which decreases both in GM volume and bold responsivity after successful CBT. Before treatment, amygdala GM volume correlated positively with anticipatory speech anxiety, and CBT induced reduction of amygdala GM volume pre-post correlated positively with reduced anticipatory anxiety after treatment. In addition, we observed greater amygdala neuroresponsivity to self-referential criticism in socially anxious participants as compared with controls before but not after CBT. Further analysis indicated that diminished amygdala GM volume mediated the relationship between decreased neuroresponsivity and reduced social anxiety after treatment. Thus, our research suggests that improvement-related structural plasticity impacts neuroresponsiveness within the amygdala, which could be essential for achieving anxiety reduction with CBT. So that was neuroplasticity in response to cognitive therapy for anxiety, social anxiety disorder from National Library of Medicine, once again. Pretty good resource there, I'd say.
Yes.
And then we just have this one video. So, neuroplasticity and learning explained.
Neuroscience is a biological science that is concerned with the function of the brain and the nervous system. For many years, scientists thought that the brain was fixed and couldn't adapt or change after childhood. But advances in fMRI scanning have shown that this could not be further from the truth. We can now see that our brains change and adapt every day, regardless of our age. Every time we learn something new, we're harnessing the power of neuroplasticity. Neuroscientists believe we have over 100 billion neurons in our brain, each capable of connecting to tens of thousands of others. Neurons are the building blocks of the brain, and each one can make trillions of connections every second. When we learn a new skill or think about something differently, we begin to make new connections between neurons. Every time we practice a new skill, think in a certain way, or feel a specific emotion, those related connections are then strengthened, and it becomes easier for our brains to follow this pathway. If we keep using this pathway, our brains begin to adapt, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The less we use our old pathways, the weaker that pathway becomes. It's this ability to make new connections that has enabled scientists to coin the term neuroplasticity, meaning our brains are pliable and plastic and can grow, adapt, and change. When we apply the neuroscience of learning with how the brain works, we can modify 4 variables to maximize the retainment of knowledge. These can be summarized as AGES: attention, generation, emotion, and spacing.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to see what you have to say actually first before I comment.
For us to be able to learn something, we need to pay attention to it. If we can't minimize distractions, then we can't focus on the learning and we won't remember it. Generation. This is where we encourage the learner to generate meaningful connections and associations with what they already know or a skill they already have.
Yeah, see, okay. I like this one's very true. I do want to comment on my experience. I used to tutor, like, I tutored peers, but when I tutored elementary students, it was a little different. So I would always figure out what exactly they were interested in. And then I would create homework assignments based on their interests so that they could actually generate those connections and learn whatever they're trying to learn and actually remember it.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Because then they'd be more interested in doing it too.
exactly. Yeah. And it generates their interest and they can pay attention to it a little better too.
Yeah.
Help the learner to make those connections to previous learning and the wider context, and this includes the learner reflecting on their own learning process. Emotion. If we can attach emotion to the learning and help to motivate the learner with the rewards that they're going to gain from it, or challenge them to get out of their comfort zone, they're much more likely to remember the information later on. Spacing. Spacing out the learning over time and using repetition and retrieval instead of chunking it into one big block will strengthen the learning and help to move it from short-term memory to long-term memory. With the trend for more courses moving towards endpoint assessment, this skill will be key in the achievement and success of our learners.
Interesting. So that's what I had.
Okay. I
Do
just
you want to
have,
go? You have one article,
yes.
right?
Yes. On stroke, neuroplasticity rewiring the brain. So, your brain is amazing, has the ability to rewire itself, allowing you to improve skills such as walking, talking, and using your affected arm. This process is known as neuroplasticity. It begins after a stroke and can continue for years. So, brain cells send messages around the brain. A stroke damages some of the connections inside the brain and between the brain and body. When you do rehabilitation activities, it encourages the brain to start making new connections in the healthy parts of the brain. Building up those connections makes your brain better at controlling your body and lets you do more things you want to do. You can help this process by practicing rehabilitation activities. There is no time limit on neuroplasticity, and it doesn't only happen during therapy. Every time you take an extra step, say a new word, or do a hand exercise, it helps the brain make new connections. And then this is just a little picture showing a very obvious basic interpretation of how, like a basic explanation of how it can happen, but just the signals go, then you have that stroke causing damages there, so then it has to build like a new network to get the signals down, build new connections. So every stroke is different. Not everyone can make a complete recovery, but many people make progress with their individual goals, like getting stronger, more mobile, or more independent. With the right support, many people can gain confidence and find new ways of doing things. And then when recovery seems to go backwards, which is known as decompensation, when the brain rewires itself, the new connections aren't always as strong as the original ones. Sometimes if you are tired, unwell, or under stress, the new connections of the healing brain can struggle to keep up. This can lead to problems reappearing or getting a bit worse. For example, at the end of a long day, someone might drag their leg more than usual or slur their speech. This is known as decompensation. It can happen when your brain is working extra hard and the signals inside the brain may be less strong. It's temporary, and you should find that things soon improve. If they don't, then contact your therapist, stroke nurse, or GP. And then obviously with any stroke symptoms or anything, you should always call, or I guess this must be a different country's
Yeah,
911,
the
but
UK it looks like.
oh, okay. But
But
yeah,
yeah, if
if
you're
you're
in
in
America,
America,
call 911.
yes. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up stroke because I mean that's what I worked with as a nurse, so it's just
Okay.
always interesting to see. Neuroplasticity itself is just interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what psychedelics those studies show. And I wonder
Yeah.
if THC, because I know it's not like a full psychedelic per se, but it's
But it's
like
like in the
minor.
it's a psychedelic category though.
They do
The
categorize
category is
it.
just a less potent psychedelic, I think, is how it is.
Oh, okay. So then that you would
But like
think,
if you smoked like, like an ounce of weed in 30 minutes, like you'd probably be tripping a little bit, you know.
yeah, yeah, it'll just be. But I guess either way, you can't core like make we can't extrapolate from a psilocybin study to the other psychedelics. Like technically, like we can assume that they would probably still
Yeah.
all be effective, but to be 100% sure, we'd have to do studies on the other chemicals too, like THC and LSD and ayahuasca
Hmm.
and
Like psilocybin,
psilocybin. Yeah,
even MDMA.
yeah, yeah. But you'd have to do it like each one would have to be. You'd have
Their
to
own
do a study on
study,
all of them,
right?
yeah, to make
Individually,
sure.
not like all in one study.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Of
Because
course.
it'd be interesting to see too if maybe like they're all effective, but effective for different,
Parts of the brain.
yeah, and or different like illnesses too, disease processes.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That'd be interesting to see too. So
for
we'll
sure.
just have
I
to
agree.
see what comes out of these studies, I
Yeah.
guess. But it's hard for them to conduct the studies because of the drug war. But
Right.
that'll have to get better, maybe.
Well, I hope so. I hope it does.
I, I want to say younger generations are more open, so I would
Yeah.
think
Although, I mean, it's a little concerning because then you could say the same thing about the boomers or whatever, when they were hippies back in the day, and then they turned into conservatives as they got older. But like that isn't always true though. That doesn't happen with everybody.
Yeah.
And I
And
feel
I
like it's
mean,
just a result of like propaganda and capitalism. And just like,
yeah.
yeah.
But they were probably, I bet they're what they still follow back in their time when they were kids would still like the conservative that they want to conserve probably when they were kids would have been considered progressive, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like they just stopped like so they probably were. I mean, not all of them,
Well,
obviously,
yeah, they probably,
but
but the people who became progressive probably just stopped like learning after a certain point
yeah, and they got
and
what they
were stuck
felt was
in the program.
progressive past, so now they're like, okay, this is
Right.
where we want to stop, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then every
Like people who will
obviously,
say, "Oh, we passed the Civil Rights Act and we had a black president, so like no more racism."
yeah. But even just
That's
with,
not how
I
it
would
goes.
say everything, like even younger generations are probably going to think we're conservative when we're older, just
Yeah,
with the new
but
ideologies
hopefully,
that come out and all that.
yeah, but hopefully it's not as, you know, like hopefully we don't our generation doesn't become like super fascist or anything.
Well,
And it's
yeah,
just like more
I don't think
conservative
anyone,
compared to the younger generations and not like conservative compared to the current generation.
yeah, but not all conservatives are fully fascist
I mean,
either.
that's true.
But
That I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying like the ideology itself is kind of rooted in it even if like the people don't
yeah,
believe in that themselves, like the ideology itself is rooted in there.
yes, yeah. And I think, yeah, anytime you want to conserve the way things are, like, I guess I don't foresee us necessarily becoming less progressive. It's more so about even if we don't understand the younger
Mhm.
generation's ideologies, just at least being open, especially because it's going to be their future. So why do we have a say in how their future is going to be?
Right.
That's
Like
what I would say. Like even if I don't agree with it or fully understand it, I'm not going to stop them from doing what they feel is right. Because
yeah. I mean, I'll be supportive.
yeah, or I want to say I will. I guess
Well,
I
I guess it
can't make
depends
this
on what the ideology
claim,
is,
but
but yeah, ideally support good. But yeah, like I feel like I've personally become more progressive as I've gotten older and like less. I mean, I've always been kind of progressive, but like, I mean, I used to think like things like we didn't need feminism and like I used to think, oh, racism's not so bad and like all that kind of stuff. And then I just was exposed to more diversity. I had more life experience myself and it just made me more progressive.
yeah, diversity is, I would say, good at doing that too, just
Yeah.
in general, which is why it's so important that just as a nation we become more diverse because it's
Yeah.
good for progress and just a lot of things, I'd say. But
Yeah.
it's a goal we got to work towards still.
Yep.
And that would help with neuroplasticity, I would say. I don't
Oh
know if it
yeah,
does, but I
diverse.
would
I
assume
would
it
think.
does.
I mean, I don't know if there's any studies on that, but like, I would think that diversity would increase neuroplasticity.
Because you're also learning about different cultures,
Right, you're learning a lot of
different
new
languages.
information
Yeah.
versus if you just stick with like people who are similar to you and not diverse. Like, it's not going to expand your neurons in the same way. It's not going to expand your neural pathways in the same way because it's consistently the same thing. You're not learning anything new.
Yes. And then even with inclusivity, that also would help because that is kind of like diversity. So all
Yeah.
these things that some people are against would actually help them and their brain just in general too.
Yeah.
But that's okay, I guess. It is
Yeah.
what I mean. It's not okay, but
It happens though.
yeah. You don't have anything else
No.
to no. Okay. So you guys can leave a comment below letting us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and we occasionally do Twitch live streams. So check them out.
Yes, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when we do. Otherwise, we will see everyone next time.